slate. I'd like to thank you all for coming here for our 11th meeting of the EMCCA board. We are certainly clocking them up, aren't we? As usual, we've got a few recommendations today for decision, and I welcome as much debate and contribution as possible, with all members of the board being entitled to and encouraged to express their views. But as usual, I hope that we will move forward as a board by consensus wherever possible. As usual, the meeting is being live streamed, so your attendance is indication that you are accepting being part of the show for this morning. There aren't any individual microphones here, but I'm sure that the microphones will pick everybody up. There are no known fire alarms planned. Obviously, should there be one, emergency exits, as you can see at the end of the room. And we'll move as efficiently as possible. So starting with apologies, I have Kim Harper, Chris Jenkinson, Councillor Doddy, Kath Mitchell, and I believe that's it. Yes, okay, thank you. Declarations of interest. Nadine?
Thank you, Mayor. I declare that I sit on the board of Marketing Derby.
Thank you. Councillor Graves?
Yeah, I'd like to declare an interest in item 14. Appendix A talks about Stavely Investment Programme and the moorings and Claycross Town deal, and possibly Ashbourne Ringbourne.
Do you mean from the perspective of Derbyshire County?
Derbyshire.
Is that actually legal?
No, I've been given legal advice that that's what I should do.
Yeah, same comment. Some of the items under item 14 are Derbyshire projects.
Yeah.
And we've both been advised that we should actually flag that we're from Derbyshire, which we're very proud of, by the way.
That's fine. I mean, I'm not 100% certain that that is required, because otherwise every single constituent council around the table would have to declare, and I think that's a taken nature of it. Councillor Gilbert.
Thank you. I'd like to declare a non-pecuniary interest as a board member of Destination Chesterfield, and similarly to my Derbyshire colleagues, I have a non-pecuniary interest in some of the other projects on the agenda.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. We don't have any questions today for public participation, so I'll move on then to minutes of the last meeting, and hopefully all happy to accept those minutes as a correct record of the meeting. Agreed. Thank you very much. Mayoral update. Well, as always, I've had another busy month in the East Midlands, but as always, it's great to be back here with the board in a more formal setting. This month, I launched the Mayor's Transport Plan consultation. It's a truly meaningful conversation with the people in this region about how they want to move around this region, to access jobs and skills and work, but also to enjoy this region and get out and meet friends and family. I think that it's an exciting opportunity for us as we start to take on those responsibilities of transport in the region, moving from the 4 transport authorities into 1 transport authority. And I know that there's a lot of interest in that, and it was a real pleasure to start this conversation in Mansfield earlier, this time last week actually. And I hope that all of you will encourage people in your communities to respond. This is a round of consultation that will take us through till February the 8th next year, so there's plenty of time to share views. And as I've said before, this is about the big strategic, it's about the big picture for transport across the region, more so than the detail of particular bus services. But what it does allow us to do is to think about how ambitious we want to be with our transport system and the investment of the £2 billion that we secured earlier in the year. In mid-October, Amy and I went to Birmingham for the Regional Investment Summit. It was a great opportunity for us to promote not just the region but our investable opportunities and connect to partners and investors who can help us to deliver them. And there's definitely more interest all the time in the East Midlands and what we have to offer. We had discussions with a range of such partners and people, including Manchester Airports Group, E.ON, the National Wealth Fund, and got many name checks from ministers about the good work that we are doing here in the East Midlands and all that we have to offer. I've had a couple of interesting opportunities to advance some of our opportunities in energy, in the first instance at the East Midlands Hydrogen Summit, and then more recently with Paul Methven at the wider STEP learning at the teaching for the Fusion Energy All-Party Parliamentary Group in Parliament. And you'll know just how exciting innovation is in both of those fields and could be for global energy futures. And I want to make sure that we take that message out there wherever we can, that this is a region that is at the cutting edge of development in clean green energy, but also the benefits that will give us in jobs and skills for the future. Another focus of mine is strengthening the role of young people in leading this region, and I was therefore delighted to spend a couple of hours with our new youth committee who met in Chesterfield at the end of October. They've got big plans, and over the course of the afternoon they set up a set of project areas to focus on over the next few months, including a takeover of my social media channels, which I'm very excited about. I hope that I will remain very excited about afterwards. For those of you who've been tracking my progress on the loop, I'm sure you'll be pleased to hear that I've stuck with it even when the weather hasn't been quite so good. So I'm now at RSPB Langford Lowfields in Nottinghamshire, with still quite a bit to go to get myself back around to Buxton by May of next year. Last week I attended engagement meetings with communities in the Peak District and in Derby. The first was to help us to understand the key issues impacting the Peak District as part of the development of work for the Peak Partnership, an agreement between myself, Mayor Burnham and Mayor Coppard to work together on some of the big issues affecting our three regions. And the second event was to engage with communities preparing their plans for receiving funds as part of the Community Development Fund. I'll be having further meetings across the 10 chosen areas over coming weeks and months, and we've recently just agreed to extend that deadline by 2 weeks because there's been such interest from the areas impacted, and I believe that this is really a great opportunity for communities to shape their futures. Finally, I also want to acknowledge an important milestone for the members of this board and for the communities that you represent. We are now 18 months old. On the 5th of November, we became 18 months old. And as you all know, because you all agreed to it, I have applied on our behalf to the government for established status. But it just shows you how far we have come in those 18 months. And over that over those 18 months, you've been working to set out the future form as well of local government in this region. And I know that's been quite a process for many of you. And it's required a great deal of effort from you and from your officials. And the first stage of that for LGR submissions concludes on Friday of this week, when you will submit those final proposals. And I just want to acknowledge the effort here, because it is an important step towards putting local government on a stable footing. And I know how hard it has been to do this alongside everything else that you do and everything else that I and EMCCA collectively ask you to do. But believe me, we are making progress as a combined authority, and long may that continue. But thank you, and I'm happy to take any questions or comments. None? Right. I'll move on then, thank you. We'll move then to item 6, which is the initial draft budget and the medium-term financial plan. Richard, come and join us.
Good morning, Board. So I'm here to introduce the draft budget report, which is in your pack, comprising a cover report and a main budget report. There is a separate item on the agenda to cover the draft mayoral budget, so I'm going to focus on the main draft budget. So this is an initial draft budget. It's presented today so that we can move forward over the coming weeks and couple of months for further engagement on the budget proposals with our constituent councils, with our stakeholders and partners, and with our overview and scrutiny process. So why am I describing this as an initial draft? Well, that's because it's presented fairly early in the budget cycle, in the sense that we don't have any information coming from the Chancellor's UK budget, which is scheduled for Wednesday, which is slightly later than we would expect in the financial year, and we're a bit earlier, so therefore the combination means that I can't take into account any of that, and I'm certainly not going to bring in to the budget any speculation, of which I know there's been lots. So we are expecting some announcements to fall from that budget, but also there are other announcements. Some of our funding is linked to departmental announcements, and again we're awaiting some further departmental announcements both on the revenue and capital side, and of course as you are around the table awaiting in anticipation the local government finance settlement, which we won't get until probably the third week in December. Last year it was 2 days before Christmas, I seem to recall. So what we've got in front of us, as I say, is an initial draft budget. It covers the draft revenue budget for 26-27 and the medium-term financial plan for 5 years up to 2031, a 5-year draft capital programme, reserves forecasts, and I would draw members' attention in particular to my Section 25 statement. It's a draft statement at this stage, but it is the statement that I need to make as your statutory finance officer around the adequacy of reserves and the robustness of the estimates contained in the budget, including the risks and assumptions taken into account. Overall, we're looking at a revenue budget gross of 206 million at this stage for 26-27. That increase is largely due to the transfer of transport operational services, which Mayor Clare referenced earlier, from the 4 constituent authority. There is also a range of specific budget proposals, including some capacity building within the organisation, and some proposals that are specifically referenced in later papers on this agenda, including around economic growth. We expect the capital programme to be at least 232 million going into 26-27 and growing significantly over the period of the forecast. I should mention that the capital programme is fully funded. There is no borrowing requirement underpinning that capital programme. The bulk of the funding of the programme is through government grant. So what are the next steps on the budget, if you were to approve this initial draft budget? Well, we're already engaging with the Overview and Scrutiny Committee. I presented the budget to them on Thursday, and they are, as we have planned, a further deep dive session on the budget on December the 11th, and I'll of course report back the outcome of that discussion when I present the final budget in January. We will be writing out later today, stroke tomorrow, to a range of stakeholders to get their views, business representatives, community groups, trade unions and other partners, and that includes committee chairs of our EMCCA committees. We'll also be continuing to engage with constituent councils, particularly on the public transport contribution, or what we call the transport levy. Now, this is the charge that we will be making to constituent councils in recognition of the transfer of responsibilities from constituent councils to EMCCA for public transport operations. So on the 26th of January, following the consultation engagement period, which ends on January the 6th, we will be presenting a final budget to yourselves, which will include setting the public sector transport contributions. We're setting that deliberately, again, quite early really, but that allows any implications of our budget setting to be taken into account by constituent councils in their own budget setting during February and early March. And of course, I should say that, of course, any further funding announcements or further detailed funding changes that that are announced between now and then, obviously they will be reflected in the final budget. So as I say, the recommendations are in the report. It's mainly to approve this budget, initial draft budget, for further consultation and engagement, and a couple of other technical points around creating 3 earmarked reserves for specified purposes and as detailed in the report. Thank you. Happy to take questions, of course.
Thank you. Okay, questions, comments? Councillor Rini.
Yeah, thanks for that report, Richard. It's very kind. On page 21, there's a table, and I was just slightly concerned to see how little has been put towards culture, art and tourism. I understand that your hands are possibly tied at the present time, but I would like to see more going into that area in future years and some assurance that ultimately that will get an uplift.
Do you want to?
Yeah, I mean, only to the extent, yes. I mean, in the extent that, of course, to a degree, our hands are tied because a part of that funding is linked to the UK SPF, which has long trailed and is now no longer available for 26-27. So those 2 lines, the economy growth and innovation line and the culture and arts tourism line in table 3, does reflect what we're able to do from our internal resources, but also recognising that that funding, that SPF funding, is no longer available to us in 26-27. But obviously noted in terms of the contribution to that around what we're taking that back in terms of where we might be able to take that for the next round of budget setting for the final budget, not least if there are further announcements that may come forward in future weeks.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Councillor Graves.
Okay. I just wanted to follow on from Councillor Rini. Visitor economy is quite important, particularly into Derbyshire, and it is down as a priority for this authority, but the figures do not sort of reflect that. And I just wanted to make sure that it was mentioned in this meeting that hopefully moving forward we would actually put some more focus on that.
So I'm happy for Richard to come back. I mean, clearly these are a starting point for our budget. We will see whether there is any good news for us from the Chancellor's statement on Wednesday. I believe that visitor economy is an important part of our growth. It's the reason why it's one of the key sectors, one of the 5 sectors in our local growth plan. And therefore, what is simply on this isn't just the whole story about the work that we are doing to support the visitor economy and everything that is within it. Neither is this the whole story when it comes to things that we might do on heritage, particularly if that was capital investment opportunities, because we have our investment fund, which could supply funding towards suitable heritage projects within the region. So I think the figure in itself, whilst we would all wish we had endless amounts of monies that we could put into these, we are dealing with a set of circumstances that are what we have in front of us, and as long as we are all agreed that we will review at every opportunity where we can provide additional funding or look to existing sources of funding to determine how they support the growth of the visitor economy, then I would hope that members would support it on that basis. So Councillor Lee first, and then Councillor Peter.
Thank you, Mayor. I was going to say, you actually said some of the things I was going to say, that we will never have enough money to do everything that we want. But I do welcome this report because I can see that we've got 206 million for revenue budget and 233 million, I think, for the capital budget. And I can see that we are focusing on projects that are designed to improve the lives of the residents who live in our area. I welcome the amount of money we're putting into transport, the fact that we are encouraging people to use brownfield sites for building on, and I can see the difference that this money will make. And I'm glad and appreciative that we are going to be able to continue to discuss this, and we can have different priorities over the years. Thank you.
Councillor Beef, I'll now bring you back.
Thanks, Mayor. I just wanted to note the progress really from last year's budget to this. Obviously we were right at the beginning of our journey a year ago, and you know, the budget was very heavily based on resourcing ourselves and putting money into reserves to secure us for the future. But you know, this is a really exciting start. Obviously it's just the draft budget, and I'm keen, obviously we're all keen to know what happens with the budget this week, but you know, it's amazing progress to see all of this investment all in one place now and really starting to move along, and obviously less of the emphasis on the reserves now, because you know, we're in a sturdy place.
Richard, do you want to come back on any of this?
No. Thank you.
Yeah, Councillor Hesbury.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. One of the issues talked about and concerned is about tourism and the visitor economy. And of course, we're always very welcome, or very welcoming, to people who come and spend time in our region and use all the resources, etc. But that does have a cost in terms of infrastructure and all sorts of other services. One of the things mentioned, or certainly mentioned, in the budget, is a possibility that areas will be able to bring in a tourist tax, and that, of course, could lead to money which is what they call hypothecated, which means earmarked specifically for offsetting the impact of tourism, but also improving the offer. And of course, that's what we want to do. We want for our local residents to make sure the impact is mitigated, but we also want to make sure that the offer makes the areas that they visit more attractive. So it could be that we might find a solution in the budget. Of course, it's a speculation entirely, but you know, what would be the downsides and what would be the upsides of introducing a tourist tax across America? You know, you may have thought of it already. I'm sure it's crossed your mind, and you may want to not talk in detail at the moment about it and your views, but it might be interesting.
Well, Councillor Hesselgrave, you are, of course, as always, on point. So you will be aware that mayors collectively have been asking for that power, because if certainly for many cities across Europe, it's normal practice. And if you go to any of those, you would expect, as a visitor, to pay a levy. A small amount of money on top of your hotel stay. And the great advantage for the residents of those areas is that they are not picking up the bill, but the investment in the region or the city as a result of that additional fund can be very, very helpful and much needed. So quite a bit of work is being done at the moment across a number of the mayors to look at what that might bring in. The case has been made to the Chancellor, and we will have to see what happens in due course, and then determine what would be right for our own region in comparison to other regions making those changes. Okay, thank you. I'm going to keep you there though, Richard. First of all, we're happy therefore to accept this, move this on to the consultation process for the budget as outlined by Richard, and we'll move then on to the next item within it, the next item, which is, so the recommendation, let me just check, approve the initial draft, approve the creation of revenue and capital earmark reserves, note the other proposed contributions to and from earmark reserves, and then we'll obviously come back to that again at the January board meeting, and note this initial draft budget. Happy to approve those recommendations. Great, thank you. Let's move on then to the item 7, the draft mayoral budget. Richard.
So this mayoral budget is presented separately. This is specifically to cover the costs of the Mayor's office and also mayoral initiatives, specified mayoral initiatives. It's separate. It's presented separately because there are different voting arrangements should it come to a vote. So therefore, it is separated. Essentially, it's a fairly straightforward budget. It covers the cost of the employees within the office, things like travel and supplies and services, and also the cost of the support services that the wider organisation provides to the office, plus an allowance for mayoral initiatives, all of which is funded from what is called the Mayoral Capacity Fund, which is a specified and hypothecated government grant of £1 million. So, as you can see on Table 1, the budget is accommodated within that £1 million specified funding. I've also set out in this report the accumulated mayoral earmark reserves. This is from earlier years. There's no contribution to or from reserves for the main budget. However, that reserves built up, as I say, from previous years is available for additional mayoral initiatives should the mayor choose to do so.
Okay, thank you. Any questions or comments? If not, happy to approve the draft mayoral budget out to consultation. We'll come back to this in January. Great. Thank you. Thank you, Richard. Let's move on to the Get Britain Working local plan. We have our new director, Fliss Miller, coming to present this today.
Thank you, Mayor. Good morning, members. I'm delighted to be here and to bring the paper to you, which sets out our plan to get East Midlands working. So this was a request, as outlined in the Get Britain White Paper last November, that all areas of the country should develop their own plan. And I see this as our people plan. How do we get everybody working together in the system to help us reach our target that's set to us to reach the employment rate of 80%. To be able to achieve that, we need to get an additional 60,000 people, our residents, into employment within the next 10 years. The plan has been developed in true partnership. We have established a new partnership called the Get East Midlands Working Partnership. Catchy title there. And the plan, as you'll see within your packs, has three main priority areas. The first is to ensure that we have effective training and support. The second is making sure that we have a truly joined up and integrated system, bringing together our health partners, our constituent authorities, our training providers, DWP, JCP and our VCS. And then finally, the third priority is how we overcome some of those wider challenges, how we make sure that transport, housing is all linked up to support our residents, our communities, to get them nearer and into work. The plan sets out some actions. They're quite short-term actions for the next 2 years as we develop the partnership and work together differently as a system. So this plan hopefully gives you the information you need in terms of the evidence required to make sure that we are evidence-led and data-driven in everything that we do. So the recommendations are set out in the plan, and I'm happy to take any comments or questions. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Meany.
I very much like this plan. We have a scheme in Derbyshire, I think it's referenced on page 20 of the report, about how we're helping some of the kids in Chesterfield. You mentioned the kids in Chesterfield down at the quad, and those programmes are really catching the kids that are falling through the cracks. And you know, those kind of programmes, you know, I see if we can support and expand in any way. Brilliant, really brilliant. So I'm thrilled to see some extra money going into that area.
Councillor Beacon.
Thank you, Mayor. This plan is really exciting for us, and we're really proud to have played our part in it as well with our excellent team at Derby City Council. And I feel that we've been leading the way as well with our Derby Promise in engaging children at a young age. And it's really great to know that that's inspired EMCCA to develop the East Midlands Promise. And of course, you know, we're now looking to build the phase 2 of that promise to be able to deliver this. And we've got a disproportionate amount of children, of needs children in Derby. So that's why it excites me that we're going to be reaching those children that are really difficult to reach, and the various different barriers we're going to help to remove those to make sure that they're getting into jobs that they, not just that they need, but that they want and that they can aspire to. So thank you.
Yes, David.
Thanks, Liz. Good report. I think the only surprise to me in the report was there's only really a passing mention of the opportunity escalator. And I kind of saw that as our big thing coming out of the Inclusive Growth Commission. I would hate to lose it, having put so much into it.
We definitely won't lose it, and I think that the way the opportunity escalator will be brought forward will totally encapsulate what's in the plan, as in that is the way to get people in and on throughout. So take point, but totally embedded throughout.
Thanks, Matt. Welcome to the report. Just for me, I would have thought within the actions there would have been something around for those places on the fringes of sort of Nottinghamshire and Derbyshire that looking at sort of accessing training over the border, how we're linking with those providers. Because whilst we sort of appreciate value, they were usually represented by Catherine, sort of the University of Derby, etc. For some of us, those won't be necessarily the access ways. So I'd want to see sort of action around making sure that we can still provide a service, or that we're accessing relevant services for folk where there's not those transport opportunities yet. And even if we're really successful with sort of the Mayor's Transport Plan, I suspect it'll be a while before some of those opportunities would be useful for accessing training solely within Derbyshire or Nottinghamshire. Thanks.
I think it's a very important point about how we recognise where people live, not where we think all our boundaries are, and people don't work on that basis. Councillor Hesgrave.
Yeah, just following on from the mention of the opportunities escalator and Councillor McKeown's observation that some people live on our borders, and opportunities, particularly for further education or for going to a sixth form or for getting to a workplace or training, will be outside our border. But it's really important that that escalator is still there for them, and that they don't lose out by living in EMCCA, the EMCCA footprint, but not actually being able to benefit from any support in terms of going out of the area. If we look at priority 3 on 4.6, the wider barriers, one of the wider barriers is transport for young people, and we're all acutely aware that we have a heck of a lot of young people for all sorts of reasons who are now either not working or not studying, and some people of those would like to do that. And when it talks about structural barriers that stop people getting into work, including transport, housing and health access, it does say including. I would hope including that is get access to further education in sixth form, so or any kind of education or training, so that we actually get, and this is covered in item 11 to a certain extent, or the concessionary fares issue. I would like to see that we are really, really keen to make sure that we make transport to and from those kind of locations where people can better themselves and increase their employability will be furthered and supported, because if people can't get there or can't get there because they can't afford it, then you know we're just setting up another barrier for them, and we want to remove those. So I mean, it's allied to item 11, and of course it allies to when we configure all the kind of concessionary fares, etc. But my concessionary pass starts at 9:30 in the morning, so if I wanted to go to an FE college, I'd be late for every first lecture. So we need to be looking at when that starts to work. It's just a kind of practical point that it'd be like a bus pass to school, you know, where you have to arrive by 9 if not earlier. Just throwing that in and I'm sure we'll look at that in due course as the Skills and Employment Committee working with the Transport Committee. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Peacock?
Thank you, Mayor. Very good report. I just wanted to mention something, I suppose anecdotal to me, something that I've had conversations around, barriers for really young people to get into employment. So I had a long conversation with a big employer locally towards Murphy's, a big multinational company, and talked about apprenticeships. Obviously they're investing heavily in our region at the moment, and obviously as a local council I'm keen that local people take up those opportunities. So the conversation went around, are there apprenticeship opportunities for young people? Murphy's, like a lot of companies, don't take on apprenticeships until children are 18. The reason for that is one, something that Paul mentioned, which is transport, but the other main reason is safeguarding. So there's all manner of safeguarding issues for companies to deal with between the ages of 16 and 18. So a lot of companies ignore that. But my view is that when you've got people, children, young people leaving school at 16, they're looking for something to do. It's at that point that employers need to get hold of people and shape people and put them on a path for life. Because I think by the time those people have left school, no interest in stopping on at college or to do A-levels, they pick up the odd job, but all of a sudden they get into a rut and they don't get out of that rut until it's too late. And I think one of the big things for me is something probably I might bang on about for the next few years is trying to encourage government or local authorities to work with employers to get over that barrier around safeguarding, around transport for young people, so that they can start apprenticeships at 16, so that they can get onto the escalator, first steps on the escalator, actually where they need to, and they can learn that discipline of work at 16 and not spend a few years going from odd job to odd job, just getting by, and then getting to 18 and not really having a focus. I think we need to concentrate, and I think local companies need to concentrate on bringing children out of education at 16 and putting them through apprenticeships.
Thank you. I think a lot of that really very relevant as we move into the next conversation as well on the youth guarantee and setting young people up so that actually they don't fall into that position. David, do you want to come back?
Yeah.
Then Councillor Lee, and then another question from Councillor Hensman.
Thank you. It's a separate point, but we're getting very good, and I applaud it at setting ourselves targets and objectives all over the place at the moment, local growth plan and further. It would be really helpful to me to see those objectives, those targets in one place, and maybe some kind of red, amber, green, so that as we're going ahead we can see how we're measuring up against the targets, rather than getting to the end and going, oh, that was great, or we're disappointed, so that we can change, amend, improve as we go through. So to see that, if it were possible, all those targets in one place with a record of how we're doing would be really helpful, I think.
Okay, Councillor Lee.
Thank you, Chair. I do welcome this report. I think it's a good report. And just as an addendum to it, I'm aware that some of the larger employers from Bassett Law have contacted EMCCA to ask how we can work together more proactively. So this isn't some kind of esoteric thing that is just going to be high up there and everybody's going to ignore, because I know that EMCCA has responded to those employers so that we can work more closely together, so that we can get those employment opportunities really going in the different areas across EMCCA.
Councillor Hesgrove.
Thank you. I'd just like to go back on and follow up on Councillor Peacock's observations. It's really important that our employers take on board, the safeguarding issue. But the safeguarding issue should be for all their employees. And let's just take the construction industry, for example, where safeguarding and safety at work has improved immensely over my lifetime in terms of how sites are managed and systems in place to reduce the possibility of accidents. And the safeguarding is important for all employees, but particularly for 16 to 18, where they are clearly not fully formed as a person, aware of dangers, etc., and are vulnerable in that sense. But let's just look at the construction industry just for a moment. You may all have read about the immense problem the construction industry has got, in the sense that a lot of its employees are in their 60s and are still going. They will have to finish. I can't imagine a bricklayer at 64 going up day in, day out in all sorts of weather where he can lay bricks, or she can lay bricks, and actually do that efficiently. So they need to think of a succession plan and go the last mile with young people and young apprentices. Many people that get through their boot camps and they get through their apprenticeships, they go to try and get a job with a firm in construction, and they say, well, yeah, you can do the job, but you can't do it quick enough, so we can't take you on. Well, they've got to go the last mile there and accept that they've got to have a period where they bed in, so to speak, in terms of speed and build up speed, and be just as efficient eventually, over 6 months, say, as a 64-year-old. You can only lay bricks so fast, you know? But, I mean, this is really important because it ties in with all sorts of issues, including the massive $1.5 million houses we have to build. So I do think we need to be getting employers to understand that, you know, it's their future as well. They can't build houses if they don't have the employees and the skilled workers. Thank you.
Thank you. Fliss, did you want to come back on any of the points?
Only that I am in agreement with all points made, especially around apprenticeships for our young people. We've seen a huge decline in the number of lower level apprenticeships, and it's something, as we carry on with our work in the next paper, that we continue to focus on.
Okay, so, again.
Sorry, just wanted to say we welcome the production of this plan, and it's positive that EMCCA have used a co-design approach with significant opportunity for partners to input that. I think that's really welcome. I think the plan seeks to create better integration between employment and skills systems and the health system. So how do we make sure that we keep the good practice that's already happening in parts of the region and we learn from that rather than to recreate it?
Hopefully these are lessons being embedded into the way in which we work. Okay, so if Councillor Goodwin.
Thank you, Mayor Clare. I just wanted to add a bit of positivity and hope. This afternoon, Chesterfield Borough Council will be signing an agreement with the Construction Industries Training Board, which recognises the excellent work that's been done under the Staveley Town deal in setting up the Construction Skills Hub, which is on a live building site in the Borough of Chesterfield on land that's owned by the Devonshire Group, and where homes are under construction by a number of house builders. And I think that this shows that actually that when you work creatively together, both the public and the private sector can deliver something that works for our people in many ways, like providing new homes, giving young people experience which bridges that gap between leaving school at 16 and maybe getting an apprenticeship. I'm really pleased to say that 98% of the young people who have been on the Construction Skills Hub in the last 2 years have gone into employment, and most of those to apprenticeships in the construction industry. And we're not just restricting it to young people leaving education. The next step is to move on to adults who for various reasons need to change their career, and that fits in really well with what's in this plan as well. So like Councillor Peakfield said about the Derby Promise, we've got something in the north of North Derbyshire that we can also offer young people, and which we will build on across the whole of the region in coming years. I'm absolutely sure of that. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Okay, so if we're happy then to approve the Get East Midlands Working Plan and then delegate to the Skills and Employment Committee the delivery of the working plan, and I'm sure we'll be following all of that happen to approve on those. Thank you. Let's move on then. Fliss, you're still remaining in place, and you're going to take us through the next paper, which is the Youth Guarantee Trailblazer.
Thank you, Mayor. So this paper sets out how far we have achieved our plans for the first year of the Youth Guarantee Trailblazer, and I'm also delighted to say that we are above target and tracking ahead of where we had planned, which is great when it was quite a quickly introduced programme. And so far we've supported over 300 young people within the East Midlands area in the EMCCA region, and due to support over 1,800 by the end of year 1. So all programmes are now up and running, all the projects are up and running, and under 2 main themes. One is looking at how we transition our young people who are at risk of being not in education, training or employment. And then the second is how can we wrap around support for our individuals, recognising that whilst we talk about NEET as a homogenous group, they certainly are, and everyone has their own individual journey and circumstances. And so this work that we're doing at the moment is really making sure that we engage with our young people on an individual basis and provide that individual support for them. So the first part of the paper is to acknowledge the progress, and delighted for every partner and provider who has taken that forward to date. The second is we're also informed that we have been given the extension for year 2, and on the whole, because it's a short-term programme, trying to keep the programme as it's running, but recognising that it is also sensible to look at where perhaps there are gaps or things we could do better. So there are 3 areas where we're looking to slightly change the programme. One is around looking at entrepreneurship, often an area that is often forgotten about, and so therefore having a real focus for that for our young people. Second is how we engage with employers in a more joined up way. And then the third is how do we integrate some of the programmes that we're taking forward in the Guarantee Trailblazer into the existing system so they work and complement each other going forward, all of which I think are sensible points to take forward. And then finally, we were approached by DFE following the publication of the Skills White Paper, Post-16 Skills White Paper, to be involved in a pilot looking at proactive enrolment. And we have had notification actually that we have been successful in that. So looking at additional £500,000 as in how we support those individuals who are most at risk of falling out of the education system, and try and help influence national government policy on how that could be taken forward too. Very happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Fliss. And I think the focus on entrepreneurship for young people in the second year of funding is a really important point for us to be making in this region. We know that small businesses are actually the backbone of business across this region, but indeed across the country. And I think too many young people will probably feel locked out of those opportunities without the support of understanding how to establish themselves and being given the confidence to do so. So I'm particularly pleased to see that, and I hope that we will work closely with also Derby University, who have recently opened their business school and put a focus on entrepreneurs as well within that. And I'm sure that there are things that we can do across the region to encourage our young people to use their innovation and great ideas and put them into a sensible and sustainable business. I'll take comments. Yes, Councillor Hasgrove.
Thank you, Mayor. On item 5.1, proactive enrolment, I'm really pleased that the government has seen that, what is common sense, that people don't arrive at 18 and become needs. The path towards being a need can start very early in life, and the sooner we can intervene, the better. And 16 is a starting point. Things like the Derby Promise, which will be rolled out to the East Midlands Promise, and the great stuff that's happening in Chesterfield in that area, helping young people to have more aspiration and maybe focus at an earlier stage in their lives than has been the case maybe nationally, and looking at what kind of route they could get into employment or further training is really essential. So I really am pleased with that, this new initiative, which would hopefully be something, if it's successful, that can be adapted by other regions to also counter this. And also, of course, let's not forget there will be curriculum changes coming in, which will help in terms of, I hope, the kind of curriculum that is offered to people who are maybe switched off from it at the moment and maybe become more engaged. So a number of various things coalescing into an approach which might make it less likely that some people will become NEETs. And as you said, NEETs are a very heterogeneous group. There are all sorts of different people who come from all sorts of backgrounds. However we can tackle any of those issues prior to that, it does make the job of making sure people get into skills and employment earlier in life than is the case for many young people.
Thank you. Councillor Peatfield.
Thank you, Mayor. It's really great that we're supporting young entrepreneurs, and I just want to, and every time I get the opportunity to, I always support promotion of social ventures within that sphere, because it's not the most obvious business route to go down, and not one that all people, and especially not young people, might consider. But you know, it's a unique opportunity and a different model, which I think we should be promoting wherever possible, especially to young people. And the other model that I think, while young startups might not necessarily choose that model to begin with, I think it's important that they understand the structures of a cooperative model of business as well. Again, you know, they might just be a one-person band to start off with, so that's not, you know, it's not going to be a cooperative model. But as they build and grow, if it's not even on their radar, it's not going to be something that they would consider. So I hope that we can introduce those models to young people.
I think I'm kind of restating the point I made before, but we tend, using public money, to congratulate ourselves on engagements. Congratulating ourselves on outcomes, whether it's business support or young people or whatever. To me, it's the outcomes as opposed to just we've embraced so many people.
Agree. And there's some outcomes already from the first stage of the Youth Guarantee that we are already starting to see those, and those have been through the Employment Skills Committee, but I think it might be helpful if we just reiterate those maybe around the board, just so that people are clear on that too. Any other comments? Just also for information, you'll be aware that the mayors, again, all of the mayors, I believe, collectively are continuing to lobby government that we should have devolution around the 16 to 18 vocational pathway. If we want to be able to avoid young people getting to the point of being NEET to 18, and we want also to be able to shape them to the opportunities for growth within our region, then we need to be able to have a bit more control over those levers on skills at 16. So I continue to make the case along with the other mayors that government needs to devolve that as an opportunity. Councillor People.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I welcome the report. I think it's an awful lot of work going to the first year with some good outcomes, and I think that could be probably presented easier for us and for anybody outside this meeting as well. I think interesting that the idea of engagement and sort of, you mentioned this high level sort of engagement, but I'm wondering, we're not a big geographic area, but I think there's some very, very different areas right across Derbyshire and Nottinghamshire, and in terms of barriers to entry into work, barriers for young people to get into work, probably different in different places. So in terms of engagement, is that something that we need to work on in terms of actually meeting with young people who have fell into some to being not in employment, education or training, and just figure out why and see if we can map that and see if there's a pattern around that, and see that would then help us maybe in the future to sort of understand how we move them into a better pathway than what they're taking at the moment. Because I think this is all good, but it feels like there's no engagement with those people who are in those circumstances. I think that's really important. It's a long time since I was 16. It's a long time since most of us around this table was 16, so I'm sure things are very much different now than what they were 20 years ago when I was 16. So yeah, that's the point I want to make.
Okay, Chris will come back on that. Councillor Reaney.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great initiative. It brings along sort of thoughts of the Princess Trust, who support young people to age 25. Long-standing model. They sprinkle of money and holding their hand at an early stage helps businesses. I think the survival rate for businesses in the UK is that 50% are no longer in business after 4 years, whereas where you get a little bit of training and a little bit of money, the survival rate goes up to sort of 80 or 90%. And I know from my own life experience, some of the people I was at school with who was the least academic are now some of the most successful because they thrived in business outside that environment. So, you know, we've got to accept that some people are on different tracks. And the staff I have who are working with the young people say that this is certainly the most rewarding sector. You know, helping young people is a fabulous thing. So hopefully we can take on board some of the lessons from schemes like the Princess Trust, which has been fabulous. And I hope this scheme's going to be a real success.
Thank you. Councillor Khan.
I support the recommendations and welcome the extension of year 2, but it was great to hear about the 500,000 as well. Is that kind of showing from DFE confidence in the region and showing actually we've kind of done year 1, they're obviously happy what we've done, and this is another confidence boost in the region to say, like you said earlier, we're marking 18 months in the post, but to get the additional, it'd be good just to understand how many other places put in, and you know, it's fantastic news, it just shows, but I do agree with David, it's about, it has to be about outcomes.
Okay. Fliss, do you want to follow up and then we'll move on?
Yeah, I will do. So on both points, in terms of as part of year 1 funding and year 2 funding, there will be an insight piece, so making sure that we capture the learning and evaluate what works and what doesn't work. So a huge part of the programme, because we need to learn and hopefully inform policy going forward, not just at a regional level but a national level too. And in terms of confidence, so everybody who was delivering Youth Guarantee Trailblazers, I believe, were approached. So that's 10 places throughout the country. Not all of them are taking that forward. I do feel, though, as we continue to deliver and demonstrate impact, and I'm totally in the place of demonstrating impact, there is more confidence, definitely, with us in the region.
Thank you. So, recommendations are to note the performance of year 1, approve the proposal for year 2, which has already been endorsed by the Skills and Employment Committee, approve the procurement of the providers via the compliant route, and to delegate that authority to Chief Executive, Executive Directors and the Mayor in the Section 73 Monitoring Officer, and to delegate authority to the Executive Director to make any necessary amendments to the proposal for year 2 delivery. So those recommendations have been to approve. Thank you. Moving on to item 10, I'm going to invite Damien Dacey, our Director, to come and take us through Economic Development Review.
Morning Board, nice to see you all. I think this is the second time the Board has discussed this, but compared to last time, we now have the conclusion of the review work and some recommendations for the Board to consider. So this review work, which is broadly looking at the infrastructure, the services which are publicly funded to support business growth, inward investment, visitor economy, some of the core functions that are necessary to deliver the ambitions of the growth plan, was commissioned by the Board earlier this year. There's sort of 2 drivers for it, right? So the first, which has already been raised, both of them have been raised in some way. The first is the funding cliff edge. So UK SBF funding ends in March 2026. The region will, as a result of that, the central government funding decision, lose significant revenue funding, especially in the realm of functions like business support, and indeed going forward nationally, the direction of travel is that funding for economic development is going to be a lot more limited with respect to government grant. Right? So government is putting other mechanisms in place through public financial institutions and other such things for funding for economic development. But in terms of that discretionary grant funding like SBF, that is being ceased across the country, so the current system that we have in the region is unsustainable in terms of funding financially. Secondly, the region, the board also asked the proactive question, which is, what is the infrastructure, what's the architecture, what are the services that are going to be needed in order to grow the region at a scale consistent with the growth plan which was agreed last month. There are significant ambitions within that growth plan, whether that is investment in our SMEs and having them grow faster, a more proactive approach to foreign direct investment and landing that scale, and a stronger visitor economy. And as we'll go on to look at, but simply put, the review has concluded that it will not be possible to achieve those ambitions with the current fragmented capabilities that exist within the region. And certainly the one that it has now. So the review outcome in front of the board today is relatively clear. The current system is too fragmented, it's too inconsistent, it's underscaled, and it lacks the key capabilities needed to drive those kind of ambitions at scales. So whilst there is a lot of really valuable and important local delivery and local architecture, the system itself overall lacks alignment, and it lacks the kind of critical mass to do so at scale. So that's a sort of starting point, as is the as is. So what the review then found, effectively, there's a series of issues. I've mentioned some of them: fragmentation, inefficiency, missing capabilities, and overall, and there's a meeting in December where the board will have a chance to talk about this more, and I think it was Councillor Peacock that mentioned it at the last meeting, but a recognised regional identity around which economic investment can be housed. Lots of good activity happening locally, of course, but it needs to be better connected. So the paper sets this out in some summary detail. There is then an appendix, which is important here, and that appendix is effectively a summary of the review work which has been happening over the last 3 months. One of the things I would note, and the board will of course sort of clock this, is it focuses on what work is necessary to be done rather than the existing structures, if that makes sense. I think that's quite an important distinction. So what it recommends is there is a need for region-wide regional working, particularly around business support, inward investment and visitor economy. Hence why you have that distinction within the report, i.e. setting up the East Midlands Growth Hub, which is an extension of what we already have, setting up Invest East Midlands, and setting up Visit East Midlands. So in terms of the options, the paper summarises these. They're in more detail in the appendix. There's effectively a spectrum of options, but in order to help clarify them, we've drawn them into 3. The sort of minimum option, option A, is effectively that, no change. The set of questions which would flow from that is what can be retained from the existing system and at what cost. At the other end of the spectrum, there is the potential to set out and invest in a fully integrated, even arm's length capability, the kind of growth company type models that some other regions have been experimenting with, and to try to drive as much impact as that as possible over the next 2 to 3 years. Or then there is the recommended option, which is the recommended one, which is setting up 3 distinct regional programs that would work with each other and indeed with the existing capability that is already in the region. So the phrase the paper uses to sustain as much as that local capability as possible, and then to scale it with regional investment and indeed a regional approach. That fundamentally is the recommendation. If the board agrees with that work, and in some cases has already started in bits, but would pick up increasing momentum from now. New commissioned arrangements supporting that approach would be put in place from April 2026. So by the time we get into a year of bedding in, by the time we get to 2027, we should have a clearer regional identity to support economic development activity like inward investment, a clearer and more consistent approach to business support, a unified approach on inward investment, stronger FDI performance, SME growth, and etc. So these are the things that we currently have less of because of the way the current system is set up. That hence the recommendation on B. So the board is being asked to agree that model and indeed some baseline funding in advance of the final budget being set, from which additional programme activity may be possible but isn't being considered today. This is just the baseline funding to keep the existing system running and give us the opportunity to scale that on the board's behalf. I'll stop there.
Thank you. David?
Thank you, Mayor. As you might imagine, the Business Advisory Board has been all over this. We have business support representation, we have visitor economy representation, we don't actually have invest representation, but we talk to them a lot. So we know their views and consulted with them pretty heavily. The Business Advisory Board has got itself into a position that it is comfortable with option B, supports option B. As Councillor Lee said, there will never be enough money, and I think the amount of money that we have managed to find should be commended. It does preserve these services, but only at the core level. You know, our ambition has got to be bigger than just preserving them at the core level, but we know why we are where we are. I don't do this very often, but I would commend EMCCA officers for their efforts in getting this from where it was about 2 or 3 months ago to where it is today. I mean, that's one extraordinary piece of work. And specifically Diana Stray, since she's arrived, has done an outstanding job on this, because there's a lot of politics being played out here, small p politics. There are a lot of people who have got a really deep interest in what's going on because their jobs depend on it, if nothing else. I would also commend the people in the various organisations in business support and visitor economy and the investor organisations, because they are living on a cliff edge of not knowing whether they've got a future, while still providing the services on a day-to-day basis, and they have been and they will be, so I'd commend them as well. But I think out of this comes something we needed as an opportunity, which is we do need to restructure this. And sometimes until you have a crisis, you don't actually do the things you need to do. And again, you know, I can see the constructive conversations that are going on behind the scenes, so that the transition to option B has already started. We won't get to the cliff edge of, you know, having this conversation next October, November. Hopefully by spring we will have some clarity as to how this is going to look in the medium term. And again, board, our ambition's got to be to find more funds to funnel into this area, because without doing this properly we won't achieve our objectives in the local growth plan. But yeah, I commend where we have got to.
Thank you. Councillor Beatfield.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you to you and to officers for listening to us and listening to our concerns that we raised some months ago, and working really, really hard to make sure that we're all in a comfortable position. As far as Derby's concerned, obviously Marketing Derby has a stake in this, as does Visit Derby, which is our internal visitor economy structure. And they are also, you know, in a comfortable position going forwards and ready to support and work with, collaborate with EMCCA. But I just want to recognise, you know, the importance of these on the ground structures, because our city is a city that has been left behind for a long time, but it's moving forward at pace, and we do that in collaboration with Marketing Derby, Visit Derby, you know, who help us to roll out the red carpet, to give confidence to investors, to fund that with our local businesses, and have them, all of those bondholders, as a part of that Team Derby ethic. And you know, it's something quite unique that we have in the closeness of our relationships in Derby that really sets us apart, and means that you know, we can attract big hitters. You know, investment, and from Wavensmere to Granger to Smart Park, to one-off investments like the Copper Building on Agard Street, which was a direct result of Marketing Derby insisting on going out to MIPIM every year. You know, some people question why, but that sort of thing is the result of why. And you know, it moves our city forward and keeps us on the map. So, and as recognition for that, as I said, Marketing Derby is 50% funded by its bondholders, which is quite unique. But alongside the investment that EMCCA are putting into supporting them, Derby City Council are willing to match that in order to support them and keep them in existence. But also, as David said, you know, aware that this is just the baseline. And of course they all need more at the end of the day. But my other thanks is for recognising Visit Derby and what they do, because you know it's a really, really important part of the jigsaw puzzle of the visitor economy in the region. And we do things slightly differently because it's in-house and it's internal. It's not just about promoting what already exists. They very, very much work with us to bring in new attractions, to build more vibrancy and to make Derby a more exciting and vibrant place to come and visit. So, you know, I don't ever want us to lose that, while recognising that they're all ready to work within the structure and on a bigger regional footprint.
Thank you. Councillor Hasgrove.
I fully support the recommendation of endorsing the mobilisation of Optum B. As you said, Claire, we're 18 months old, we're a mature organisation. We have a lot to develop. One of the first things that we were all told when we first met, probably the first or second meeting, think big. And thinking big is stretching us all, and this is part of it. And I give immense thanks to all those involved through the Business Advisory Board and EMCCA officers in producing the final recommendation and the legwork they did. I think the important word in that is partnership arrangements. We know as local authorities that working in partnership with other agencies and the voluntary sector magnifies what we do and gets it more coordinated and is a better use of money. And I think that approach is really important in terms of it moving forward. There is speculation that we may move to option C eventually when we are more mature and we have a better handle. But I think that this transition period, the most effective way of getting this on the ground fast and recognising local initiatives and how well they are actually working, or how they can be given a little bit more help, is absolutely essential for our movement towards better economic growth and prosperity for all our residents.
Thank you. Councillor Carl.
Yeah, I'd agree with what's already been said, and I'd probably just say it's important that we have certainty, because we've got some really good people that have got the links, the experience, and if we really want to be a region that delivers, I don't think we're in a position where you want to lose that and start from scratch, because we know it can take time. So I think that's really important, but I also think there's an opportunity, like we said, about having a region approach, because it's not just about Derby, Nottingham or wherever. It's if visitors and growing the economy, if it is people, they need to go to the other parts of the region which are as good as the others. So I'd welcome that and I'd support this.
Thank you. Councillor Gilbert.
Yeah, thank you. I'd like to start by thanking the EMCCA officers for the efforts that they've put into this. It has really been a big piece of work, so well done everybody. Destination Chesterfield Board met last week to do its usual planning session for the coming year, and that board is made up of anchor organisations such as the Royal Hospital, Borough Council and Devonshire Group, but also entrepreneurs, including social entrepreneurs. But we've not been able to find a co-op yet, so apart from the shops. But the board recognise that hard work that's been gone into this, and recognise that there are challenges, but there are more opportunities than challenges, and this piece of work really does sort of link invest with tourism, with business support. They're not mutually exclusive, and there are opportunities for joint working across, and of course with the skills agenda as well. I've also had some conversations with the officers, is not the right term for it, but the people who work for these destination organisations, and one of the points that's been made to me when I've been doing that is the importance of existing brands and where they sit, and there might be a sort of an outcome of this sort of work that there's a thinking that the brands might sit under the Visit East Midlands strategy, and I'd strongly suggest that perhaps they're the hooks to hang it on, because we've got Robin Hood, that's a sort of internationally known. We've got Chatsworth that's internationally known from films as well. And we've got things like Buxton Crescent and the Crooked Spire in Chesterfield, Newark Castle, the things across the region that can be hooked onto as well. So let's be careful that we don't subordinate those really strong established brands by doing this really important work that is necessary. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Beanie.
Yeah, thank you. I recognise this going forward. No problem with the model selected. My concern is just the core funding level, which I recognise is core funding, almost life support really. And I look hopefully for more monies going into this area in the future. I'm concerned that at this level of funding, because of course this level of funding also includes setting up this umbrella structure front door, and actually when you look at the amount of money passed to each area, it's not a great deal. One must recognise the previous teams in the Derbyshire, Joe Gillis team doubled tourism. We talk about not working at scale and pace, but that team's doubled tourism in the time they've been in existence. So if we can actually do as well as that, I'll be thrilled in the long term. So the amount of money that Derbyshire's going to receive, and just put it in context, when you split it out, take off what we'd need to actually set up, kind of the EMCCA side, I think the end result is something like $500,000 something for Derbyshire. To put that in context, the county spent more than that on road closures for the weekend when the Tour de France come through. So I just want to put that context out there, that this is, for me, life support funding, core funding. I very, very much look for more funding going forward. It's a really important area. You've referenced heritage and so forth. This is what brings visitors in, and we really must treat this as a priority.
Thank you. Councillor Peacock.
Thank you. I just want to congratulate the board, actually. I think we raised this as an issue previously, and I think it is important to recognise how important the work that has been going on over the last few years. So we raised that, and it's good that our officers have gone away and done what they could. But I think just from comments today, it's clear that we all see this as a bit of a priority area, and an area that we do need to see more resources brought in whenever possible. So, but that's the big message, I suppose, from this, is just thank you for getting us this far, but let's not leave it at that.
And Councillor Good.
Thanks, Matt. I think for me, I'd just echo some of Councillor Gilby's points. I think building on sort of the brand and not losing some of the work that's been already done, particularly Visit Peterston, Derbyshire. I think, some of the work they've been able to do, we've in some cases sort of limited funding from the various partners, has really been valuable in terms of sort of drawing people in. I think probably my only bit to add in a sense would be around just making sure we don't put the boundaries too tight, particularly sort of on some of the Peak District stuff. There are bits that sort of stray across into Staffordshire and so on, and I think we probably need to work out sort of how best we can sort of encourage them to still be involved in particular sort of where there's those bits of cross-border funding, etc., that we can make sure we can still utilise that to make sure those organisations are doing the best they can to get us more visitors. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you. Damien, do you want to come back on anything?
No, very helpful, thank you very much. The instructions very, very clear. A couple of reassurances maybe. On branding, completely agree with the point that we have, that we are blessed with a number of, I think in the trade they call them attack brands here for consumers. Visit the Peak District being one of them, but certainly not the only one. So one of the conclusions which has been reinforced by the review is how you do some of that domestic and international marketing so that you elevate the whole of the region whilst not diluting some of the clarity of some of those brands like Robin Hood and the Peak District and other such things. So my understanding is that the teams are very much working on that. There is a plan for a domestic marketing campaign to trial what some of that might look like over the winter into the spring. Visit East Midlands within that would be more, again, I think it was called sort of business to business. So this is about a collaboration of institutions working together as opposed to the thing which is sort of very much directly out there to consumers. So that's branding, and points made absolutely about funding level. We've used the phrase baseline funding, I think, but the expectation should be that through other programme activity like the investment zone or anything else which comes up for next and future years, that there will be additional investment subject to the board's consideration of that into some of these functions. And of course the broader, you've just done the budget, but the broader position is 80-90 million pounds worth going into skills and employment next year and other such things. So of course there is more investment than just as including the EMCCA team, which is trying to help convene and corral the system. So I hope that helps. Thank you very much though, that's very clear. We will get on that and set these things up.
Thank you very much. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We've got 6 recommendations. They're all on your papers. You're happy to approve all of those?
Yes.
Excellent. Great. The team will get cracking. Move then on to item 11, which is the concessionary travel scheme. Edward?
Good morning, board. So this item really launches us into the start of a really major piece of work for EMCCA around public transport fares and concessions. As you'll know, EMCCA becomes the new transport authority for the region next year, and we're well advanced with our process of transferring functions into EMCCA from our constituent councils with a go-live date of the 31st of January. Richard mentioned that in relation to some of the budget items earlier. One of the first and most important things that new team will do when they move into EMCCA next year will be to instigate a full review of fares and concessionary ticketing to come up with a new set of arrangements for the whole of EMCCA, looking at issues like harmonisation of discretionary fare offers and the importance of this and the fundamental role that transport can play in inclusive growth has already been mentioned a couple of times this morning. So this work will be kicked off and conducted during 2026, so next year, as soon as that new team is formed in EMCCA, and that will be for implementation from April 27 for the 27-28 financial year. So it's a vital and complex piece of work that will look at all the different options for harmonisation, the costs, the benefits, and crucially the funding strategy for that, to allow us to bring back proposals to you in due course for decision making. So whilst all of that work is ahead of us, the report today is what we intend to do with fares and concessionary travel for the 26-27 financial year, i.e. whilst that review and that work is taking place before any changes have been proposed. Because EMCCA will be the transport authority next year, we need to have a formal scheme in place, and because it's a new policy for EMCCA, it needs to come to the board, hence why it's here today. Given we haven't yet conducted the review, and given we haven't got the team in place to do it yet, the only realistic option for 26-27 is a standstill position, where we simply mirror the current arrangements of each of the constituent councils so that nobody is better off but nobody is worse off either. That just allows us the time next year to do the review. It's the only logical recommendation we felt. So that's what this paper recommends. It's a standstill position proposed for 26-27, and then noting the much more considerable implications of a full review of fares and concessions to take place next year to bring back proposals to you in full course. Thank you.
Thank you. Any comments or questions? It's just business as usual. Thank you very much. Happy to approve?
Yes.
Thank you. Let's move on then to item 10, governance update. Sanjeev.
Thank you, Mayor. So, board, this report sets out a series of proposed amendments to the Constitution to ensure accuracy, internal consistency and alignment with the authority's evolving governance arrangements. The details of the proposed changes have also been presented to the Audit and Governance Committee on the 14th of November, and they were in support of the recommendations that are set out in the report. The report today seeks approval for adoption of a revised Officer Code of Conduct as recommended by the Audit and Governance Committee. The report also seeks amendments to the Constitution, in particular relating to committee membership, committee terms of reference, public participation and the officer scheme of delegation. In addition to those, the report also notes minor and consequential amendments arising from the governance review that was undertaken earlier this year and also the ongoing constitutional review process. These proposals reflect EMCCA's development as a maturing authority and reinforce the importance of regular constitutional reviews as a foundation for strong governance. A detailed schedule of the proposed amendments is appended to the report. The Audit and Governance Committee meeting on the 19th of September endorsed the revised Officer Code of Conduct, which sets out the standards, behaviours and responsibilities expected of all EMCCA colleagues. Following that endorsement, the board are asked to formally ratify the recommendation. Also, following the governance review earlier this year, the EMCCA board has adopted a more strategic role, delegating key decision-making powers to its committees and establishing the Housing and Land Committee to support spatial development. This shift provides an opportunity to ensure the Constitution reflects EMCCA's strategic direction and supports collaborative decision-making while enabling the Mayor to further develop her leadership role both regionally and nationally. As part of this realignment, the Mayor's role within committees has also been reviewed, and it is proposed in the report that the Mayor remain a voting member of the Transport and District Connectivity Committee, with attendance at other committees reconsidered to strengthen the role of portfolio holders and technical officers. These changes to committee membership require amendments to the terms of reference of our committees and are accordingly proposed in the report. They've also led to some proposed changes to public participation processes, and these have been reviewed to ensure consistency and effectiveness across all of our committees, with revised arrangements proposed to allow public questions to the Mayor at board and questions at committees to be addressed by the Chair. There are some further amendments to the Officer Scheme of Delegation that are proposed to support operational efficiency, including budget-based delegations and internal requirements from allocated budgets. I have consulted on the basis of this report with constituent authority monitoring officers, and as mentioned, the proposals were also considered by Audit and Governance Committee, who were in support of them. So finally, minor updates have also been made to the Constitution to correct some typographical errors and to ensure consistency, and for board to note that a full review of the Constitution is also proposed. An Audit and Governance Committee have approved the establishment of a member working group which will be made up of its members, and a further report will be presented to board on those amendments next year. So the board is invited to consider and approve the recommendations set out in this report, and I present it for approval, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Questions, comments? No? You're happy to approve?
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you. We'll move on then to item 13. Recommendations from the committee. Sanjeet, back to you again.
Thank you. So this report presents recommendations from EMCCA committees for board consideration and endorsement in accordance with our governance framework, and reflects EMCCA's commitment to transparent, accountable decision making. EMCCA board has agreed terms of reference with committees which define the roles and responsibilities and delegations for each committee, and this report is submitted in line with those arrangements. This report in particular brings forward a recommendation from the Skills and Employment Committee following its meeting on the 17th of October. The committee considered the progress update on skills boot camps and endorsed the proposed approach to planning for Wave 5 commissioning, scheduled to begin in April 2026. The committee's endorsement includes a dual-track commissioning approach via both procurement and grant funding routes to ensure timely deployment of future funding and alignment with regional priorities and existing skills programmes. Should the board approve the recommendations today, it is noted that estimated expenditure and grant funding for Wave 7 has been incorporated into the draft 26-27 budget and medium-term financial plan 26 to 31, which will be presented for board approval in January 2026. And with that, I present a report for board approval, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Yes, Councillor Ellsworth.
Thank you, Matt. Just on what was discussed earlier about outcomes from all the initiatives the Skills and Employment Committee have been working on and helping to introduce in the region. As it says on 3.2, I think it's 3.2 of this report, 3.2, the report considered by the Skills and Employment Committee can be viewed by this link, and that tells you some detailed information about outcomes. So it tells you can get more information about outcomes in terms of how many started a course, how many actually got a job, and how many have got job interviews, etc. During that process. So just a kind of information really for people that they can track along and see that there are some really good outcomes in that. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else on this? You're happy to approve? Okay, great. Thank you very much. Let's move on then to item 14, which is the EMCCA Investment Fund Pipeline. Just to be clear, we have two papers. We have this paper, which Damien is going to present, which relates to the specific investment fund proposals in that pipeline. We then have a paper in part 2, which is public exempt because it sets the exact figures there, and some of those are very much commercially confidential. So if you wish to have, we can have a very broad discussion obviously on the specifics of the project, but if you wish to talk about part B, please indicate to me, because then I will know whether or not we do need to actually discuss that separately in part B. If you don't, we may take both of those papers in this part in order to be more efficient with our time. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Great, okay. Damien.
After board's instruction in September to bring more projects forward for investment with the capital funding available through the combined authority, and indeed in this very room, the investment committee's review of the process and the candidate projects in October, which Councillor Callan-Rini presided over, we now have 10 projects to be added to the capital pipeline. Effectively, this is so that we can do final business cases and indeed get those, subject to those business cases, have that funding approved. So that's the sort of, that's where we are in the process. That's fundamentally what the decision is for the board to consider. That's because it's only within the governance framework of the combined authority, only the board can formally add projects onto the pipeline. The approval of the business cases can commence within the scheme of delegation, some of which is for board, some of which is for Councillor Khan as portfolio lead, as in the investment committee, and some are for officers, so depending on what the value is. So that's the consideration for the board today. There are about £25 million worth of projects which we're currently looking at. There's 17 in total, and there are 10 which are in the listed in the public paper to be added to the pipeline. Work on those final business cases is already started, as it were, in anticipation, of course, as you would expect, and there is material in the private annex that you would have reviewed.
Thank you. Comments, questions? So perhaps I'll just start by saying that this is a really exciting opportunity for the region, and actually the proposals that are before us are spread across the region, not every part, but that's how we determine, isn't it, the investment that we put in terms of being able to get the best opportunities and growth. But I also think it was important that we bring these forward and we try to do things as quick as possible, but as efficiently as possible. And I think what we have before us are good projects that tick a number of boxes for communities, particularly around investing into high streets and towns that will see regeneration, that will see more people coming and spending their money and enjoying the pride within their communities. But they're also about supporting local businesses and growth, all the things that we've already been talking about today. And I think in all of these, this is just a starting point, and I think will give good confidence if we are approving these and money's going out the door. It will give good confidence to other communities across the region when they start to see the impact of this funding, and will believe then that they too will be able to share in that investment programme in due course. Councillor Carr.
Yeah, just to say we're working at pace on this at the investment committee. The kind of endorsed this decision, but we had an informal meeting afterwards where we were actually able to do like a deep dive and actually make sure that the money that we have is, and the projects that are coming forward, what difference will they make and how do they link to the ambitions of what EMCCA wants to achieve. And like you said, there's just so much you can, that comes forward that you can fund, so we've just got to start somewhere. So these are potentially 10 going forward, there'll be some more coming in March where we can have some look at how they all join up, so definitely endorse this, and I think it's about how you make a difference, and rather than just the money sitting in the bank, it's about making sure that people understand the difference EMCCA is making. So it's really positive that these 10 are able to come forward and hopefully have some more in January.
It's kind of a good point you made, because just looking at the list of projects and the places that money's going to be invested in, is places which, I don't know, people use the term left behind or whatever, but you know, as a district council, we've invested in those communities, or we wanted to invest in those communities, but from those communities you get the same story. Oh yeah, it'll never happen, it's promises, things will never happen. But these are happening now, and I think that's really important, that people actually, communities move away from that idea that nothing ever happens in their backyard, that they have been left behind. And I think there's a lot of opportunities, a lot of potential in those areas that does need bringing out, and it's this kind of investment that's going to bring that out, and to change that kind of, almost change that mentality around that, and lift people's spirits. So yeah, it's good, great news.
Excellent. Any other comments, questions? No? Therefore, can I put to you the recommendations to approve the projects set out in Appendix A, and can I also say Appendix B too? You don't plan to raise anything else? Brilliant. Onto the EMCCA pipeline for future development of the final business case. Happy to approve. Great. Thank you very much. Let's move on then to item 15. Which is the business rates retention agreement, and Damien, you'll stay in your place and take us through that.
Yes, thank you. So hopefully what will turn out to be a relatively simple piece of housekeeping, but let's have the conversation. So obviously we have the East Midlands Investment Zone, which is a region-wide programme to support economic growth in clean energy and advanced manufacturing, but it's specifically focused on the development of 3 key sites, which all form a part of our vision for growth, our spatial cluster. So obviously we have Explore Park in Bassetlaw, there is the Hudson Staveley set up within Chesterfield, and then Infinity Park in Derby and South Derbyshire. So it's part of the various incentives, the various pieces of policy around the investment zone. One of them is a 25-year business rate retention policy, which we were allowed to, when the investment zone bid was submitted, put forward a red line boundary for in 2 of those sites, and those 2 sites are Infinity Park and Chesterfield at Hunton Staveley. So what this is the board considering agreement to the heads of terms on the business rate retention arrangement. If the heads of terms are sufficient, the full business rate retention agreement can be drawn up in line with those heads of terms, and indeed then, subject to delegations, recommended approval of them. And obviously it's not just EMCCA, would also be the billing authorities in this case that would also need to sign those. So the heads of terms is shared in an exempted annex, but the principle there is effectively the arrangements for that business rate retention policy.
Okay, so just a reminder again, if you want to go into the detail, the heads of terms, that's in part B, so we would need to do that separately. Please indicate. Otherwise, the principle, the paper that we got before us, which is all the board of principles. Councillor Carr.
Just needed some clarity on the governance of how it will actually work in practice. I don't know if it's this bill or the other bit. Where's the sign off again?
Graham, do you want to come?
A board, in this case, so our interpretation of the Constitution is that board would need to agree. It's the EMCCA signature effectively on the business rate retention agreement for the investment zone programme, that's principally under the auspices of the investment committee, because you remember we talked about it a few times, and there's the meeting on Monday again, there's an investment zone item. So the investment zone policy and programme has oversight on behalf of the board for the investment committee. The technical arrangements of the business rate retention agreement, because it's a financial instrument, needs to be agreed by board, which is why it's coming here.
Okay, so it's just working, when the case by case as it comes through, will it go through the investment committee then, or into that deep diving rather than?
Yes, and the business rate retention progress against it as part of the investment zone programme, it will have oversight from the investment committee. Yeah. So one of the key things that isn't there yet is the team have not yet been able to do a forecast on how much, what is the business rate growth predicted that will then be captured by the agreement. So that work, for example, is happening now, and that will be reported to the investment committee.
Any other comments, questions? Yes, can I speak?
Thanks, Mayor. Two things from me. Just to acknowledge and thank EMCCA for recognising our enterprise zone and obviously working with our team to honour that long-standing arrangement there. But the other thing was, which I can't talk too much about, but obviously last Thursday went down on your behalf and with my obviously council hat on as well, to London as part of the team of EMCCA, Derby City Council, the University of Derby and Rolls-Royce to discuss the investment zone, the Infinity Park investment zone, with some very, very exciting partners in nuclear, and there's a lot moving there, and this is, yeah, it's all good stuff. Can't say any more.
Secrets. All good news, right. If there's nothing else on this, are you happy, therefore, to approve the heads of terms? That's the detail that's sitting in the exempt paper, but also the principles set out in the delegations. Happy to approve those?
Yes.
Thank you. Then I think we've actually therefore covered all of our items, 16, 17, 18. Yeah. So can I take this opportunity to thank you again. That was pretty efficient and swift business as well, but also quite significant business. And I think there's some really positive news coming out of the region, of the things that we're investing in, the things that we are doing to invest not just in places but in people as well. And I will look forward to seeing some of you, I believe, we have an informal event in December. Otherwise there are no more formal board meetings between now and Christmas. Before I finish, I think David wants to say something.
Yeah, and I would hate to steal the last word off you. That's not a clever thing to do. But so I'm a lawyer in my day job, as you probably all appreciate, and it's quite nice for me to find that there's a new breed emerges, less popular than lawyers, politicians. But I wanted to give you round the table all credit for something I observed quite acutely from the position I sit in, is that you are managing to sail what is quite a challenging ship in the same direction, and that is pretty blooming impressive. It's also very impressive when you go, as I did last week, to a meeting of all the business board chairs from across the country, so there's 30 odd of us, and you hear some very, very different stories. You hear some really challenging stories. You hear some really challenging stories from the have-nots, i.e. those that haven't got an MSA yet, who are being left behind, or they're not. But you hear some really positive reflections on how we're doing here, including from the big beasts, the Liverpools and the West Midlands is. So you should pat yourselves on the back. You know, this is, from my perspective, impressive. Thank you.
Thank you. And as somebody who's both a lawyer and politician, I suppose I'll take double of those. But I do give credit to all of the partners around here, and I think the advantage of delivering on a combined authority is if we are able to focus on place, focus on our communities. I think everybody sitting around this table is here because they want to do the best for their communities. And if we focus on that, then we will absolutely make progress collectively. And I have already seen that it a big difference when people outside are considering the investment opportunities in this region, if they know that the combined authority is working, all pulling in the same direction, even if we might have different colours, politics, views on lots of different things. Actually, when we focus on place, we make a much bigger difference. And so I just want to commend everybody for the work that they do in making that actually happen. So thank you very much. And I look forward to seeing you informally. To everybody else, I wish you, if it's not too early, I don't think it is because the Christmas trees are already up, a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Thank you.
Thank you.